jokes about who tells the best version of your story. How about another question from the audience?
Yeah, I got a question.
Yes.
Could you talk a little bit about your more recent song about the FBI, and does that relate to your family history at all? Or would you rather not talk?
Do you want my version or hers?
Our tax dollars at work. My dad got picked up on his way home from a meeting of farmers in New Jersey. They were meeting to discuss the price of eggs and whether they could hold it down. And the FBI picked him up for questioning. And then, I guess they let him go. They didn't think too much of it. Then shortly before or shortly after I was born, they came to our next house, also in South Jersey, and they wanted to come in and talk to him about communist affiliations. My folks were very much not communists. I mean, my dad could care less. My mother, if you called her a communist, would have been horribly insulted. She was a Marxist Trotskyite or a Leninist something. She was not a communist. And my dad was a capitalist. I mean, just resolutely so. But they wanted to come in and talk to my father. My mom was attending the Civil Rights Congress as well, and they wanted to talk to her. And my father told them if they didn't have a warrant, they couldn't come in. So my folks got put on the watch list. And then my dad got a degree in teaching. And yet he could never get tenure. For a teacher, after 2 years, you got tenure, and that meant that you had pretty much job security for life. My dad could never get it. And as a result, we skipped from town to town, and apartment to apartment. We never could get a house. We never could settle down. My mom asked me to get their FBI files, and it took 13 years and the intervention of a friend in the State Department. They kept, once a year they would send me a thing saying, "We're looking for your FBI files when we get around to it. Do you still want them?" By the time I got them, my mom was dead. And what we found in looking through them was that my father had never gotten tenure because they had gone to the principal of his school every year and asked whether he had communist affiliations or had been seen consorting with them. So of course that was the end of tenure. And that's how he wound up teaching here in San Francisco. He pretty much ran out of places between New York and Jersey and put as much distance between them and himself as he could. So, you know, it's not as hard to imagine right now as it was 10 years ago. But it's hard to imagine a world where it was considered patriotic to inform on your neighbors or to see a communist under every bed. It's hard to imagine a world where somebody like my parents had to be afraid of the magazines I might carry to school. That's so un-American to me. I can't imagine living in that world. And yet I live with an attorney who has dissected the Patriot Act over and over again. And I know that even as a performer now, I can't be seen carrying more than, I think it's $5,000, maybe $10,000 in what they call monetary instruments, because under the law it can be confiscated and never given back. Yeah, read the Patriot Act. It's pretty scary. Anyway, so that was us in the FBI, and we could always spot them as kids because it would be the dead of summer and 150 degrees outside, and they'd be wearing black suits with black ties. Anyone else? Questions for anyone? You know, for a West Coast, Northern California group, you're surprisingly docile.
Have you ever heard of the Raging Grannies?
No, I have not heard of the Raging Grannies.
There's an international movement of older women that sing about what's going on.
I love that.
Yeah.
Good for you, Raging Grannies.
Yeah. The original pod was from Victoria, British Columbia, and they wrote a book about their antics called Off Our Rockers and Into Trouble.
That's great. I'll look that up online. That's great.
Now we heard of, I'll come to you in a second, I promise.
But I finally get a question.
Well, Kai mentioned about the upcoming benefit, and we have a little ballot initiative here in this state. It's pretty important to all of us. And I know you and Pat got married in Toronto.
2003.
2003. Can you talk about the power of that and that ceremony for you too?
Well, at the risk of being totally politically correct, it was pretty weird. I mean, we were at home, I ended each other on the computers, and I said, I saw on the CNN crawl that we could get married in Toronto. And so I said to Pat, and I have to go to a science fiction convention. Do you want to get married? And she ended back something like,
So Pat was really lonely one night. Janis was away for weeks.
it was a dark and stormy night. No, we went to Toronto. I really did have a science fiction convention to go to. And I've been telling audiences in the live show that it felt very weird. It was a little embarrassing. And it felt weird because there's so much new attached to it. Here you are marrying somebody of the same sex. What do you call each other? What do you wear? You know, we've been together 16 years. The bridal department was out of the question. And we really did go through the bridal department. We went through the lingerie and the women's sportswear and everything else. And we wound up getting married in Hawaiian shirts, which was a pretty good compromise. But we still felt a little strange about it. And I will confess that even now I feel a little strange calling her my wife, because it's just been so inculcated in me that a wife is married to a husband. I think the encouraging thing about it, we live in Nashville. That's not exactly a bastion of left-wingers. And yet after we got married, Pat, my partner, who practices law in a lot of small towns in Tennessee, kept getting congratulated by local judges. Now that was amazing to us. I mean, we just would have figured out that they'd rule against her no matter what. And instead they were saying, oh, read about your wedding. Congratulations. It can't be that none of them knew it was to another woman. That was our first thought, but it couldn't be. So that was very encouraging. And the other encouraging thing was just watching ourselves go through it, because we really entered it part seriously, but part with embarrassment. Partly not ashamed at all, but feeling our way through this new ground. And when we finished our ceremony, we both burst into tears, and it really shocked us. Because all along we've been telling ourselves, well, it's just a piece of paper. It's not a big deal. It's not even valid in America, you know, in the U.S. anyway. Mm-hmm. And yet we found ourselves weeping. And I think it was the first time that both of us had realized that in our lifetimes, I mean, I'm 57 years old. In my lifetime, I've seen the law change to where blacks and whites can be married in every state. I've seen the laws change to where homosexuality is not automatically a sentence of insanity. I've seen the laws change to where gay people can dance together and not be arrested for it. And to me, these are astonishing times, and yet I would never have dreamed that in my lifetime, non-homosexuals would also see my right to marry as a civil rights issue. I would never have dreamed that we could cross borders that way and stop separating ourselves so horribly from each other. So when we found ourselves weeping, we realized that it was really because we felt the weight of an entire nation in our backs. And we suddenly knew what it was like to have a whole country and a whole legal system ratifying what we felt for each other. And it was at once just astonishingly profound and somewhat confusing and profoundly moving. And then we came home.
Oh, and in their shy way, they also put it in the New York Times, and they were the first same-sex couple in the wedding announcement in the New York Times. 2003? 2003.